St. James, do you want to introduce our panelists today?
Absolutely honored to. So this evening we have Mariah Parker. Mariah, I want you to know I've been following you for a long time on the socials. Okay, you seem to be everywhere. Okay, from Cop City. The other day we were talking about the Alabama solution, doing that for next month. I googled Free Alabama movement, and there you go again. You're just all over the place doing that revolutionary shit. We love it. From the other side of the ocean, we have brother Roger McKenzie. So let me go ahead and read their bios for y'all real quick. Mariah Parker, they, them pronouns, is an MC, lifelong Southerner, and an organizer with the Union of Southern Service Workers. It's a cross-sectoral labor union for retail, restaurant, gig, and care workers that have historically been excluded from traditional labor unions. They are based in Atlanta. Parker helps coordinate Waffle House worker organizing, which in 2024 won a one announcement of historic raises for 10,000 servers making less than $7.25 an hour. In their spare time, Parker also makes hip hop under the stage name, correct me if I'm wrong, Lingua Franca, and is a co-editor of No Cop City, No Cop World from Haymarket Books. Roger McKenzie is an international editor of the Morning Star. His journalism can be read at his Substack, Red Star Dispatch. I've read it. It's awesome, revolutionary. Y'all check it out. And People's World and People's Dispatch as well. Roger is an author of African Uhuru, The Fight for African Freedom in the Rise of the Global South, and The Rebirth of the African Phoenix, A View from Babylon, both published by Manifesto Press. Roger has an extensive and long history of activism and activity within the labor and trade union movement and is well known internationally as a leading anti-racist campaigner and trade union organizer. He's a founding member of the Global African Workers Institute. Before joining Morningstar, Roger worked for 11 years as the Assistant Secretary General of Unison. That is Britain's largest trade union. He had responsibility for organizing, recruitment, and education program for members and activists. Prior to that, he was at West Midlands Regional Secretary of Unison, and before that, Midlands Regional Secretary of the Trades Union Congress. Point being, he was the first black unionist to hold any of these posts within Unison. So we have these two revolutionary organizers. Rogers also a former chair of the Labor Party for Black Sections and co-chair of the Anti-Racism Alliance and former Labor councillor in the London Borough of Islington. So that being said, we went over who do you love. Let me start off with a question for you both here. We often hear about the labor movement as a monolith. Could you each describe the specific moment or story that made the struggle for workers' power feel personal and urgent to you?
I'd be happy to go first. And first of all, thank you all so much for having me. It is a great honor to be here. But the moment I think that really captured my heart and instilled in me a sense of urgency to build worker power actually predated my time with the Union of Southern Service Workers. I served as a county commissioner in Athens, Clarke County, Georgia for 4.5 years, working on local policies like raising the minimum wage for library workers, affordable housing, fighting the police, things like that. And the summer of 2022, there was a mass eviction that was happening in my district. Perfectly legal, above board, is mega landlord from Florida with a net worth of $150 million had bought up these duplexes. People had been living, month to month without leases for sometimes a decade or more. Families of children, families oftentimes like doubled up. And people were getting these notices on their door that some folks weren't even sure what it said. They received these notices and weren't even sure what it meant, that they were being served with eviction. And when, as commissioner, I went knocking door to door, to find out, to try to build the level of organization we would need to fight back. Um, a lot of folks turned back to the politicians and said, well, why don't y'all do something about it? Why don't you all pass some kind of policy or do something to help us? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? And when I went to my coworkers on the city council about like declaring a public health emergency to stop the evictions because homelessness is a public health crisis, of really, risking litigation ourselves in order to protect these people who are going to be thrown out of their homes, a lot of them just threw up their hands and said, well, the law is the law. It's at the state level. It's what it is. There isn't anything we can do. And in that moment, I was so disgusted by the fact that the government oftentimes turns its back on working people when they need them most, but also saddened by the fact that our communities did not have the organization in place already to fight the true enemy, which are the corporate landlords, which are the big billionaires and the CEOs that are immiserating us all. And so in that, I resigned. I resigned 2 weeks later, and went to work for the Union of Southern Service Workers to build that kind of power where when people get eviction notices on our doors, we can say, hell no, we won't go. The kind of power where if someone gets unjustly fired at their job, we can, pile outside with, flags and signs and bullhorns until they get put back on the schedule. And at essence, take the back for ourselves and do what the government oftentimes refuses to do. So that's why I'm here organizing workers today.
You're muted, St. James.
Sorry about that. I was just like, wow. But this was when you were an elected official on the city council in Athens, and
That's
that
correct.
housing issue is what got you into labor.
Yeah, just needing to build like working class power, like the power of the people to defend themselves, to protect themselves, to build the kind of future they want outside of the two-party system, outside of electoral politics, where ultimately a lot of the folks in office today are the managers of capitalism, and recognizing instead that like we have the power to stop these kinds of things from happening as the masses of people if we build organization to resist it and to build the kind of future we want to see.
Beautiful, beautiful. And same question for you, Roger. What's a moment or specific story that made the struggle for workers' power feel personal and urgent to you?
Well, I suppose, I mean, the first thing I want to say is how wonderful it is to be part of this call. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be part of this. It's very early in the
Ditto,
morning
same to
here.
you, brother.
This is 1 o'clock in the morning for me. I think I only ever get to 1 o'clock in the morning at New Year's Eve usually, and that's it. But this is important. So, I mean, to answer your question, for me, it started at school, and I can't even remember what the grievance was, but I was asked by other school students to lead a walkout from the school, and we did. We the way the school was that there was the school on one side of the road, and on the other side of the road was the playing fields for the school. So I led the walkout. I organised it. Led the walkout. We walked across the school. We must have been, I don't know, 14, 15 years old or something. And we had a mass meeting in the playing fields, and I learned from that the power of the collective and the power of people, even young people, standing together, and that never left me. And then I remember a discussion with my mom before I started work for the first time, and I left, and she said to me, when you start work on Monday, which was on building sites, you must join the union. But more than join the union, what I want you to do is to become an organizer with the union. She was my mom and my dad were both strong trade unionists. They believed in people standing together, and part of that was because of the kind of racism that we experience over in Britain as well, and that they'd experienced, where our house was regularly attacked by racists. Where we as individuals were attacked as racists and by racists as well. Just trying to get to school was an ordeal. And so she said, join a union because you are going to face problems in the workplace. So I started work on the Monday on this building site. By the Tuesday, my job I was given the job to go around and collect the union dues. And in those days, I'm very old, right? So back in those days, you used to be able to, you used to actually get money in a packet rather than it going into your bank account. So my job on the Friday was to go around the building site and to climb up ladders and to persuade all of these white workers, because I was the youngest and the blackest person on the building site, to give their money to the union. And all I got was abuse. I don't think I collected a single penny. But what it taught me was the need that you can have all the principles in the world, you can have all the ideals in the world, but unless you're determined and organized about the way that you're doing things, as you are clearly with this call, then you will get nothing. And that's always stuck with me. So for me, that's a key principle, that you can have the principles to guide you in the direction that you want to go, but you must be organized and you must have discipline and you must keep going back, even to those racists who were trying to stop me from doing my job as a union organizer. You must keep going back. So for me, those are key lessons that have always stuck with me.
So that wow, beautiful story, just riveting. Um, so that initial student walkout was over racist issues,
It was partly over that because
if I missed it.
it was partly to do with racism, but it was to do, I think, mainly, from what I can remember, with just the poor condition of the school.
Mm,
The school was falling to bits, and we were expected to go into that school and learn. There was the school that I went to was a few hundred yards away from the local sewage farm, you know, and yeah, we working class kids and in those days there weren't too many black kids in the school. The numbers were growing, and this was in the early 1970s.
mm.
Um, so, but all the black and white kids were having the same experience. And we found that, the same thing that we experience today as working class people is where people try and divide us against each other. And that's what was going on, where those people who are in control were trying to divide the black and the white kids against each other, the Asian and the African kids against each other. And our job, many of us felt, those who were coming from a position of thinking about what we were facing, our job was to try and bring people together to try and exert some power in that school. And that's what we tried to do.
Wow, wow, beautiful, man. So white, black, all races of kids coming together on an economic issue like the structure and conditions of the school, and also your mom is what inspired you. That's just a beautiful story. I gotta that just kind of same with me. I saw my mom go from working three jobs to one when she joined SEIU and the SEIU organizing committee as a Haitian immigrant. So same. My mom didn't tell me to become a organizer, but she's like, you got to do something out here. So thank you, Roger. You can take it next, Brent.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both for sharing. Mariah, you talked about, how you came to the Union of Southern Service Workers. So what does your day-to-day organizing look like now there? And what does a win look like for a service worker in the South today? And is it different from a traditional, or what we think of as a traditional image of a union victory?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in which our style of organizing and the vision of our organizing differs a lot from that of a traditional labor union. Once upon a time, at the birth of the early days of the Industrial Revolution, you have these giant work sites where you have like 1,000 workers that are all at this auto plant together, all at this shipyard together, and so you had these common bonds of going to the same bar across the street every day after work and chopping it up, or you might take the same train home at the end of the day, but because of the ways that the economy is being servified, turned into all these service jobs, in the South, it's the most common form of employment. Someone is being in a service position. Now you got folks that are separated, all these different work sites. Rather than having 1,500 people in a single building, you might have 1,500 Wendy's workers that work all across the metro area of Atlanta. That takes you an hour to drive across on the best day. And so a lot of our work involves having to go from site to site, from store to store, restaurant to restaurant, Wendy's to Taco Bell to KFC to Popeyes, to meet people where they're at, literally standing at the counter, and just engage them about what their day has been like and who is actually to blame for the problems that they face, not only on the job, but in their communities that are driven by poverty, which is driven by corporate greed. And so just like listening to workers and helping them connect the dots between their everyday experience and capitalism, but also what directing people to the solutions. You might go and ask your boss for a raise on your own, and he might tell you, "Yeah, let me get back to you about that," and never do anything. But the tune changes when everybody on your shift goes up to the boss and tells them that we are going to shut down all of breakfast unless we all get a raise. Differing from a large work site like, a factory, shipyard, it doesn't take many people to shut things down at a Denny's. And so there's a certain way in which the workers have a really unique kind of leverage where, yeah, they could like, you could take seven people and shut down all of breakfast. And that's going to make a really big impact on the bosses. That's going to make a really big impact on the community whose consciousnesses are then shifted by like awareness of the power of collective action. Um, so that's what we try to encourage workers to do. We aren't the kind of union that waits around for a union election or the NLRB, the government to say we're a union. We know that our power to strike has long existed before our right to strike. And so we strike the bosses hard and often to help build up worker leadership and cultivate like a taste for militancy. So when we talk about like what does a win look like, all right, we might not be winning a big time union contract for the next 5 years. We might win something small, like the waffle irons getting fixed when customers are throwing plates at you because they can't get a waffle. They might be like getting a sexually harassing manager fired. It might look like getting somebody back on the schedule that got fired for getting robbed at work, which is something that really happened one time. Waffle House worker got robbed while she was working and they fired her. But when people win those small kinds of things, it makes a big difference in their lives. Everyone likes not having plates thrown at them. It also shows people that when we fight, we win is not just like a maxim, it is like reality. And in that way, building that taste for militancy where it no longer seems like a crazy thought to go on strike. A general strike is no longer a crazy thought. In fact, people are like, why are y'all waiting? Like, where is the strike? Why aren't we walking out in the dozens, the hundreds of stores at a time to win $25 an hour for everyone? And so that really to us is victory, the transformation of workers into leaders, the building mass organization for the long term to lift the standards for the entire service industry. We've already seen, $15 an hour become common parlance for a living wage, even though it's now more like 25. We've already seen like that consciousness shift in people and the material gains of like corporations, claiming that out of the benevolence of their hearts, they have raised working conditions. When reality organizing has won all of those things. So all of that is great. We can lift standards across the industry, and we have, and we will continue to. But along the way, we need those small wins, materially on the shop floor, as well as winning the hearts and minds of the working poor in the South that are predominantly Black and brown, and have been left out of unions before.
That's beautiful. If I can just real quick, if y'all didn't catch all that she just said, all that they just said, excuse me, sorry. The NLRB is a National Labor Relations Board, and I just went through that whole process. You gotta get the votes and get people to count them up, and the government, and it's a whole bureaucratic red tape, and they come in there and they count all the votes. And Trump just dismantled the NLRB. So what Mariah just said is we don't need them to exercise our power. We can just
Mm-hmm.
organize and exercise it, and that's beautiful. Well said, Mariah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, so many gems in there. Um, but one of the things that sticks out is you saying that our power to strike existed long before our right to strike, and also good context talking about what a win looks like. It doesn't have to be the flashy, splashy you're on CNN Union Win, and talking about what organizing looks like. I think, yeah, it's not always the big wins. It's not always having a big profile or getting up on a soapbox with a bullhorn. What we call the hot and ready work. And in your day to day is a lot of the slow and steady work, right? There's a lot of time in transit. There's a lot of time going to where people are at. A lot of time in traffic, a lot of time trying to get folks' attention. But that's how you stack those wins. So appreciate that. Thank you. And Roger, so while I know you focus on documenting and telling the story of labor struggles through journalism, that's just part of your work. And as you talked about, in your last answer, right, for many years, you were and have been organizing with multiple labor formations. Could you pick one of those and share what the day-to-day organizing looks like and also what a victory looks like for those struggles that you're engaged in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many similarities to what Mariah was just saying, actually. If I can make a comparison for a moment, because the union that I used to work for, we had 1.3 million members. Um, my job was to think about and develop organizing within the union. And part of what Mariah was just saying was about how things have become atomized and instead of big workplaces, many, it's all privatized, lots of small kind of workplaces. We had, for 1.3 million members, we had 300,000 workplaces. We had 20,000 employers. So it's a huge kind of challenge for us to how do you build workers' power when actually what was actually happening was that lots of workers weren't seeing each other even. So in the care sector, for example, you had people who simply worked on their own. And my job was to try and find ways of getting those people to develop some sort of collectivism. So mainly black migrant workers in those jobs, very low paid. So, you've got the seeds of something there in terms of, what we can be working with. And I remember there was one hospital in the northwest of England, so just near, I suppose the city you would have all heard of, Liverpool. So near Liverpool, where in this hospital, privatized kind of what were they, catering workers, I think they were. So it's a fairly big hospital, and the way that their contract was organized was that you had to bargain with the with the company that on the face of it looked quite small, but actually was part of a major multinational company, Sodexo. So it was owned by, so it's a French company, basically. And our job was to think, well, how can we build some power for them so that we can get them to raise their wages because they're really low paid. And we work with them. We help to give them some confidence that they could actually do this. And actually, this wasn't somebody coming in from the outside who was going to be able to kind of wave a magic wand or something. That is actually something that they have the power, if only they understood it, to be able to deliver that. To cut a long story short, what we did in the end was they won a strike where they won a unprecedented, to this day, I think they won a 20% pay rise and better terms and conditions. And it was all because they stood out in the pouring rain and then the snow, and they won their dispute. And what I see now in the industry that I'm in is that I see a similar thing as well, because we used to have big newsrooms, those don't exist anymore, really, large extent. We have the newspaper I work for, which is Britain's only English language, which is the world's only English language socialist daily newspaper, print newspaper, the Morning Star. None of us work in the newsroom. We all work from home. So where I'm talking to you from now is my newsroom. This is where I do my work from, and that's the same for all the journalists, all of us. Um, and it's the same on lots of these big, kind of corporate media papers as well. I mean, we're not corporate media, we're a cooperative basically. Um, but on those big corporate newspapers that used to have big newsrooms with, kind of hundreds of people floating around those places, most of those don't exist now. So again, the same question exists. How do we build workers' power when workers don't actually see each other? And we've got to be really imaginative about the way that we do that. So it's not the same, as Mariah was absolutely right in saying, it's not the same as just being able to walk around a big office or a big factory. Even hospitals, which are still the big buildings, but there's lots of different contracts within those buildings. So we've got to find ways of being able to bring people together when the ruling classes have decided they're going to put every obstacle in the way possible of people being able to come together. So they don't have the same breaks. They don't have the same opportunities to stand around a water fountain or whatever. They don't have the same opportunity to do hardly anything together. And some workers don't even see another worker who's doing the same job. So we've had to be much more imaginative about the way that we do things and using things like this, the kind of new technologies that are available to us. But also sometimes it means doing the hard slog of just going around and finding people where they are, and just walking around and talking with people, and not taking the comfort line of just thinking, well, we can just call people to a meeting and they're all going to come, because ain't going to happen, right? Not going to happen. We've got to find a way of engaging with people and making people feel that collectivism is a reality, even though they're not in the same building or not in the same room. There's other ways of building collectivism. So for me, that's one of the biggest challenges that we face at the minute, is how we can do that and get people to understand the collective power that they have, because the ruling classes, the bosses, have done everything that they can to make people think they're on their own. And there's it's just down to them as an individual. We had a prime minister years ago called Margaret Thatcher, who said that there's no such thing as community, there's no such thing as the collective. It's you're on your own. And even Labour governments in Britain have kind of followed that line as well. So that's what we're fighting with. We're fighting about, it's more than trade unionism, actually. It's about how we can get people to understand the power of the collective in the workplace, but also in the community as well.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Made me think of basically divide and conquer, right? Divide and conquer has been their strategy since colonial times, and the only thing we have to fight against it is collectivism, like you say, right? Which actually brings me to the next question, which is, how is your work tied to the international struggle outside of your countries? How do you reach, specifically, how is your work with Black workers tied to struggles elsewhere? And this is both theoretically, strategically, and materially in practice. How do we connect? How do we connect ourselves when all they want to do is divide and conquer us across oceans, across states, across different workplaces?
The Union of Southern Service Workers really highly values political education with our members as a form, a part of leadership development, but also because you can't organize properly without understanding the context, which means also understanding the history of how we got here and then the bigger picture of the present. So when we teach workers, we're teaching workers about the fact the American South is in many ways the global South. Their struggles are ours, our struggles are theirs. American empire, as we know it, wouldn't be possible without the theft of native lands and the afterlife of slavery that we're still living through as we're shackled to these poverty wage jobs. Like you literally can't build 1,000 military bases all over the world without a pretty fat piggy bank, and you only develop that by exploiting people, paying people 213 sub minimum wage as a surfer, and other ways that Black folks in the South have had the power wrung out of them by the bosses. Um, and so when we talk about, fighting against ICE, We talk with workers about the reasons that people migrate. Why do people in the global South come to the United States, and help them understand the true causes of migration. It's economic policies that benefit the global elite at the expense of farmers, at the expense of our natural resources, our ecosystems, which then drives environmental collapse, which then drives people to migrate, which then drives, capitalists to figure out how best to exploit those people, to divide us so that they can exploit all of us and put us in the conditions we find ourselves in today. And so, like, the war on immigrants, the war on drugs, quote unquote, the war on, I'm about to sneeze, but maybe I'll make it through. Okay. The war on Gaza, like, all of this is like one military industrial complex, whether it's happening across an ocean or here. It's the same technologies that are being used on all of us to repress us, to destroy our communities. And if we can all build together across those divides by just starting very simple, starting at your own workplace, but building a union as a tool of political power, any political obstacle in our way, whether it's housing policy, whether it's cuts to SNAP and Medicaid, any of these things, we can defeat them if we have sufficient levels of organization. That includes our issues, and includes issues that impact somebody seemingly a world away that doesn't look anything like you, but at the end of the day is a working class person. So materially, we try to instill in folks the understanding that we're taking the money back by organizing a union that's capable of winning concessions from the bosses. Taking that money back means that's money back on their paychecks and not going to Cop City in Atlanta, which Waffle House Fund is a part funder of, and as well as many other corporations that sit on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation. Taking money back that could be used to train ICE, taking money back that belongs to us and is right now being reinvested in our own repression. So we're trying to graft together these like economic and social interests in this way, to start with, from a theoretical standpoint, for understanding, these broad networks of power, but then also materially, like rooting ourselves in the fact that we're taking back our money, we're taking back our power in a material sense as well.
Awesome. Great answer. I can sum it up with, like I tell people, it's cool if you get the bag. It's better if we get the bag. Collective needs to get the bag, okay? Love it. And what you said about the war or the genocide in Gaza, how it's connected to the war on drugs, this big military industrial complex. And I got to mention, y'all see old King Cracker Donald Trump trying to restart the war on drugs because, Venezuela got oil. So that's all that's about, killing innocent people in the Caribbean, in the ocean, just so he could start another war in Venezuela. But Roger, same question to you, because a lot of the things you've been talking about this morning, where you're at, thank you so much for being up so late. But I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, yo, that sounds like my workplace. Yo, that sounds like stuff that's going on here in Miami and New York and Atlanta. So same question to you. How do you tie your work to the international struggle outside the UK, specifically with Black workers? How do you tie it to elsewhere, both theoretically and materially in practice?
By making the same point that you've just made, actually, that actually we face the same struggles internationally, and that's the key, really. I'm lucky enough to work for the Morning Star, where I'm able to write about this stuff every day. I'm able to write about worker struggles every day, and we prioritize that in our newspaper, where not just where I'm able to write about the things that are going on internationally, and we're prioritizing resistance, we're prioritizing the struggles that working class communities are taking part in across the globe, but we're also talking about those things within Britain as well, and we're trying to make the link between those things. And actually, just last night, one of the things that we do in the union that I'm a member of, the National Union of Journalists, we have a Black Members Council. And I'm the co-chair of the Black Members Council. And one of the things we do every year is we invite somebody along to do a lecture in memory of, named after the wonderful Claudia Jones. who's one of my absolute heroes, right? Somebody who not just an activist, an internationalist, a wonderful, wonderful journalist. And one of the things that we reminded people of last night was that the things that she was writing about in the early 1960s, where we didn't have the benefit of all the kind of technology that we've got now, what she was doing was she was connecting the struggles that were taking place. And every single day when I sit at my computer to think about, to choose the stories that I'm going to write about on that day, the thing that's at the forefront of my mind is how we're going to connect the struggles that are taking place. How are we going to make sure that people who are struggling for more pay in Brixton in London understand that the people who are facing police harassment in New York or Washington, D.C. or wherever are facing the exact same things that they are. So part of our role is that, and it's also the reason why I write the books that I write as well. The first book that I wrote, African Uhuru, was actually all about the issues of building black communities of resistance in Britain over the years, because people just think that too many people just think that people of African descent only arrived in Britain in 1950 or something. 1948 with the Empire Windrush. We've been here since Roman times, you know. It's a long, long time. You know, that's like thousands of years we've been here, in big numbers as well. And we're still doing, you know, we were brought over it by the Romans to guard Hadrian's Wall, where it's cold and horrible. And we're still doing the worst jobs that no English person wants to do even now, right? Still the same after all these thousands of years. But what we need to get not just white people to understand that, but we need to get our own community to understand that as well. And that's part of what we do, those lectures, and what I was writing about in African Uhuru as well. And the second book came out as a way, part of that education process of saying that, you know, all right, so I've talked about Britain, but let's talk about what's happening and the importance of Africa as well. And let's look at that and let's understand that that's our roots, that's our heritage. And we need to understand that, you know, all the lies that we've been fed about Africa for far too long, 500 years of humiliation we've had to suffer, and the lies that we've had to endure for the whole of that time, that people need to understand that we come from great civilizations, right? And that people need to understand that. And from that, we can draw our power to be able to deal with the challenges that we face today. History, I think, I'm a historian. History isn't just about looking back and saying, well, that was bad or that was good. It's about drawing on that for the challenges that we face today. So our political education, again, Mariah's spot on with all this, you know, the politics, the political education that we've got to prioritize now, I think, is drawing on that rich past of resistance to racism. From the day there was racism, there was resistance to racism. From the moment there was the first bit of racism, there was resistance to that racism. And we have to learn about the different ways that that took place. Going back to the question that you asked earlier on, because of the change in circumstances that we've always had, you know, the fact that we face more atomized workplaces now, you know, we've always faced different types of workplaces, always been changing, and our job has always, and we've always had to adapt to that as people of Africa, you know, as people of African descent. We've always had to look at different ways that we had to adapt to slavery, we had to adapt to colonialism, we had to adapt to this neo-colonialism, you know, and we've always done it. We're the most, you know, kind of adaptable people on the planet, probably. But the situation that we face now requires us to put our heads together and to think about how we do that. And I think the education processes that we can go through, like the importance of this call, which I just think is a wonderful, wonderful initiative, is so important in bringing people together, exchange ideas, and then importantly, think about how can we take those ideas out to those places who wouldn't come on this call, or who wouldn't come to a union meeting, or who wouldn't come to a Communist Party meeting or whatever. How can we make sure that we're able to take those issues out so that we can engage with people so that they can be the kind of part of the spider's web, I suppose, that we need to create. So it's not just us, but we go out to 3 or 4 or 5 other people, and they go out to 3, 4, 5 other people, and so on. And we just develop that spider's web. For me, that's the critical thing that is part of our internationalism, not hoarding it as a kind of, well, we know this and we're so brilliant because we know all this stuff, right? It's got to be, well, we know this and this is how we can take this out so more people can know this as well. And for me, that's the challenge for us.
No, that's
Beautifully. Well said.
great.
Both of y'all said political education. Just some thoughts that ran through my head while you was talking, Roger, real quick. Just I love the way you put that it's not just political education. Both you and Mariah put political education front and center, but also how it's important to take it to the people who aren't normally on these calls, right? Who aren't in universities. We in the political committee call it the Walter Rodney method, right? And what you just said about ever since there was racism, there's been somebody. I have something similar that I say to my street brothers, which is, ever since the first white man stepped foot in Africa, there's been a nigga fighting back, So we're going to keep that tradition going. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, and Roger, I love what you said about history isn't just about passively looking backwards and saying, oh, that was good or that was bad, right? It's about taking lessons and applying them. In our political education, we talk about theory as a weapon. And I think what you're describing is using history as a weapon as well. That's really instructive. Thank you for that. So another question for both you, Roger, and you, Mariah. So, where you both organize, right, the US South and the UK, both those places have a history of powerful labor organizing, but also a history of fierce anti-union opposition. What are the biggest structural and political obstacles that you face, and what new strategies are proven most effective now in overcoming them? And whoever wants to take that first.
We can reverse it. I'm gonna let you go first, Roger.
I think in Britain, it's and by the way, I use the term Britain very deliberately rather than the UK because this is about colonialism. UK is a term that refers to or brings Ireland into the equation. Right, because I'm for a united Ireland basically, and what we have is we still have Britain's oldest colony, Ireland, still split with the North. So we tend to say Britain because it recognises that fight for a united Ireland effectively. But I mean, for me, it's the obstacles. Well, clearly we have legal obstacles that we're not able to get the capitalist class to remove, which is why we have to prioritize the idea in people's heads that we can't wait for laws to catch up with us. We have to do things ourselves to make the change. If we'd have just waited for somebody to change the law on enslavement, without actually having made it completely impossible for enslavement to continue, which is what happened, then we'd still be waiting, really. So we've got to get people to a level where people understand that. So there's a challenge of the law, there's a challenge of the racism that is on the rise and the authoritarianism that's on the rise, certainly in Britain, and I'm sure, well, I know is also on the rise in the US and certainly across Europe as well. And the way that's being used to dampen down workers' rights, but it does another thing to us as well. And it's a theme that I've kind of touched on a couple of times here as well, is that it also it also regulates us as Black people as well, because it stops us from remembering our revolutionary past and from remembering that we were never given anything by anybody. Never given anything by anybody. We've always had to stand up, organize, and fight for it. And because of the way that uh, you know the ruling classes operate, what they're doing is they're getting us to believe that this is the normal state of affairs and we just kind of have to, people should just accept things rather than getting up, organizing and fighting for things. And they'd almost get people to, I think Brother Malcolm X talked about this all the time, that have us kind of blaming each other for what happens rather than standing up with each other. And when people stand, and when some of us stand up, you get the kind of tap on the shoulder from from another Black person who says, well, maybe you should just be quiet about this and just accept it, because you're causing too much fuss. And I think that's a challenge for us, is how we can get people, regenerate that kind of spirit of resistance in people. So, and I'm not blaming us for that. Right. And I don't want that to sound like I'm blaming us. I'm not. What I'm saying is there's a job of there's an organizing work to be done there. So we've also got a trade union movement in Britain that often says that, well, we've got the quote, we've got a proud record of standing up against racism, when actually most times they haven't. There's lots of individual white trade unionists and Black trade unionists who stood up against racism, but equally there's lots who haven't. In fact, there's lots of examples. In my first book, I wrote about examples of where white trade unionists stood with racist, organized racist groups, and worked hard to keep Black workers down. And I know that's the case in the US as well, because in the past I've written about some of that stuff and about why you needed to have sleeping car ports, sleeping car porters union set up all those years ago, was because of the blatant racism that was taking place, and the way that white trade unionists didn't do anything to support Black trade unionists or Black workers. So similar thing over here as well. So we've got to be, I think if we're going to do this stuff, we have to be really honest that there's a job that needs to be done with white trade unionists as well. And they have to look at themselves in terms of what they do. And we need to look at ourselves in terms of the role that we play as Black activists, and making sure that it's not just a kind of servicing kind of, well, we just need to make sure people get proper representation in the workplace type approach, which we do need to do those things, but we need to bring about a radical and fundamental and irreversible change in society. We have to do that, because we could be having this call forever otherwise, which is nice. And I love you all, as I said earlier on, but actually, I think I'd rather see some real change take place, and I think that's got to be our focus. And for that to happen, we have to be really, really clear about the challenges that face us, and that it's multifaceted, multi-leveled, and so must our response be.
Whoa, whoa. A lot of gems, a lot of heat. Um, that is
Dropping the
that's
mic at like 2 a.m.
at 2 a.m.
Sir, damn. Well, I suppose I can try to follow that.
I don't know how you
Lesson
fight like
learned.
a
I
three.
should go first every time. But no, I mean, I think in addition to some of the Philip did go in. Some of the atomization we talked about earlier, we also have to talk about in the American South, labor law and misinformation. A lot of people in the South like straight up think unions are illegal. The only time they've ever heard of unions is in the context of right to work, where it's like, well, all I know about unions is that we can't have them in the South because of right to work laws, which is fundamentally just like not true. And so something that we're up against is like the lack of education about labor rights. We're up against, I mean, like going all the way back to like the failure of Reconstruction, the success of the KKK in destroying multiracial democracy in the South for 50, 60 years, that produced, the impacts of like the Fair Labor Standards Act, which left out domestic workers, which left out agricultural workers, gave, union rights to everybody else, collective bargaining protections, all that kind of stuff. But Black and brown workers in the South were not only left out, but in some places in the South, like South Carolina, it was enshrined into law that they could only be farmers or they would be fined for taking on other forms of employment. And so we're up against that legacy, as well as then the compounding generational impacts of poverty of a kind that you only find in the South, where poverty is most concentrated of any place in the country. So we got to deal with, in terms of organizing tactics, we got to deal with people's phones getting cut off all the time. We got people moving every 3 months. We don't even know where to find workers, because we live in the incarceration capital of the world. We have to deal with folks getting in and out of jail, in and out of prison all the time. And then as a result of this precarity of being tenuously housed, of being this close to going back to jail, being afraid of exercising their power, because what if this job that y'all trying to get me to organize is the only job I can find as somebody with a record? I just got in this apartment by somehow lying to them. Clayton County Sheriff's Office, tell them to me. Yes, Clayton County, we organized down there for sure. When somebody just got into an apartment because they somehow were able to prove that they had 3 times the rent, you about to tell me that I'm going to go out on strike and risk it all for the promise of not having to, make these same kitchen table choices about if I'm going to keep my light bill paid or going to keep my car note paid. And so I think these are true throughout the country, throughout the world, in fact, but in the South where poverty is most highly concentrated, and with the segment of the population that that has historically disenfranchised from choosing their lawmakers, from having democracy in the workplace, through the ways they've been excluded by labor law. They're scared to struggle, they're scared to lose, but also they're just scared to lose so many different things, not just losing the battle of the workplace, but losing their homes, losing their cars, and things like that. So in addition to meeting people at their workplace, we also got to encourage folks to, what we call like community unionism. So we are not just a union for you and your coworkers. We are a union for your mama and your cousins and their friends and their cousins and their friends and their coworkers and their friends and their cousins, and bring all of them out to the chapter meeting, bring all of them out to the strike line. And through those means, if you can move a neighborhood, you can keep people together, because we do have these informal networks of communication. We do have these like power blocks that if you move one, you can move the whole thing. But also the power of numbers, it just multiplies. It's exponential when it goes from just trade unionists, just people who are directly impacted by these issues out here taking this militant action together. It goes into, no, bring your kids. We're going to have childcare at the meeting. Bring them little babies. Bring, I don't care if you get along with their dad these days. Bring him and bring his friends and bring everybody, because we are stronger together, even if we work in different workplaces. So we do, because of this precarity, people also cycling between different jobs, also have a cross-sectoral approach. We're a union that follows you wherever you go. Traditional union, you might get fired from Amazon or something. Well, Amazon don't have a union quite yet, but let's say you a UPS Teamster, you get fired from UPS, you're not a Teamster anymore. If you get fired from Starbucks, you're not a Starbucks Worker United anymore. But in our case, we are a union that goes wherever you end up. So let's say you come in as a Waffle House worker, and then you get fired for getting robbed at work. But you've been through some of our political education. You've been through some of our organizing trainings. You've been part of this community of belonging that we create, where you're not just coming back for your economic issues and gain for the long haul. You're coming back because you just love your comrades. You're going to take that spirit into the AutoZone when you put in that application. You're going to take that spirit into the Wendy's when you put in that application. And as soon as shit go down over there, you're going to know what to do. And you're going to know who has your back in doing it. And so that's another way we like deal with the way that folks' lives are constantly in churn. Let's give them the tools that no matter what the conditions are that they're organizing in, no matter who they got to organize with, they have the power. They not only have the raw power, but the knowledge power for how to overcome those circumstances. So
That's beautiful. Y'all just reminded me of something that's like to both of y'all points. How you were talking about Roger with these unions and dealing with these white folks, and how you were talking Mariah about the miseducation and how some people would get locked up for joining a union, or some people just don't even know about the unions, right? So I just had a recent experience where I was hired to. A union came down to South Florida trying to organize a warehouse full of 300 all black workers, and they had none but white organizers. Right? I ain't want to say their names, but you said it already, Mariah. It was a team of organizers. You know what I mean? So yeah, this team of of a bunch of white dudes trying to organize a warehouse full of 300 people. Um, about 75% of them are Haitian. So the homie reached out to me. I got a job to be a Haitian translator, and these guys are trying to wonder why they're standing outside in the parking lot and everybody keeps passing them by. I'm like, because you're white, you know. But then I finally start talking to some of the workers, doing house visits, right? Going to their homes, hanging out with them, talking to them. And I'm hearing from these Haitian employees that their bosses are threatening to have them deported if they talk to union organizers. And it's like, yeah, you know about wine garden? You know that shit's illegal? And you got to educate. You really got to explain to people that no, like you should not be working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, not knowing when you're going to go home. That's slavery, and we've been stopped that shit, you know? And yeah, after a very long battle, they separated 300 warehouse employees into three separate elections, but we finally ended up organizing them and winning. And the guys had a big birthday celebration at the club. A bunch of black dudes, and the organizer was like, "Should we go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you getting invited to the black picnic. You don't say no to that." But yeah, that goes to your point, Mariah, about building community. It's not just about we won this election now, whoop de doo, we done, we going home, flying to the next spot to organize. No, you have to actually now build with these people. You have to build community with people and actually be part of their lives. And I think that really is the next step that's missing from the movement entirely. But yeah, quick follow-up questions for y'all. For Mariah, how does the USSW tackle the challenge of high turnover and precarious unemployment in the service sector? We talking about Waffle House, Wendy's, all these fast food places, and people don't last long in these sectors. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so I think I touched on this a little bit already, talking about like the cross-sectoral approach, right? Of just like recognizing that we can win in the short term, gains that people are going to immediately feel and going to inspire, like candor that in leadership that they'll carry with them no matter where they work next. Um, Unlike a typical union contract where like you have to go through an election and then you got to bargain a contract and then you have a contract on the books for 3 to 5 years. In these cases, the wins can get rolled back if there isn't continued militancy on the shop floor. So that is something we have to encourage people. Like it's not enough to go on strike once and win the thing. Y'all got to stay ready for the fight. And so really instilling people in that like mindset that it's going to take like the continued flexing of strike power or the threat of it in order to keep those gains in place. But then there's the reality that like because the law is so fragile, because the NLRB really is or it's frozen, but really has barely ever worked for us. People may get a judgment that hey, you were unfairly fired 2 years after the fact, and yeah, you might get back pay. But what were you doing for them 2 years? When you got dismissed from your job of 16 years, right? So again, just like trying to use the power that we have collectively as our best defense against that. Like, yo, also if you retaliate against people, the entire community is watching. Like we have your eyes on you, so they can't like use the turnover to their benefit. By just well, we'll just get rid of you if you do anything because y'all are disposable to us. But ultimately, we can't guarantee. We can't guarantee the same people are going to be in these workplaces 6 months from now. Places like Waffle House have like a 200% turnover rate. That means like they're having like two whole different staffs in the period of a year, right? And so it's so important again to like build that community union where it spreads somewhat through whole, rather than spreading through workplaces, the idea of a union is spreading through whole neighborhoods, through whole family trees, through whole informal social networks. Because that same collective power is what we need in order to like build towards things like a general strike. We can't just have, you know, a couple of Wendy's workers walk out and it just be very focused on that one corporation. In order to have political power, we need power across all these workplaces and building where there is already organization, which is like within families, within neighborhoods, geographic areas, regardless of where all these people work. Like that's going to get us towards political power. So that's a way that we not only can build that political power, but deal with the issue of folks coming and going from these jobs so often. A recognition that like we are all in this together and not in an abstract way, not just like, oh, we are the global working class, but like literally your cousins, the guy that does your nails, the guy that does your tires, the everybody, like we are all in this because we're all workers. We have each other's backs no matter what our issues are, but oftentimes our issues are very similar. So in training folks up to be leaders, to be organizers themselves, organizers on the job, again, they can carry that fight, be that to the next workplace they're at, or into other organizations like these where they can share that, you know, to help spread that consciousness to other people and build the fight in that way. So ultimately, over time, we do have the mass organization we need to just like make the ruling class totally irrelevant.
Wow, that's so beautiful, especially considering you made me think of the fact that what is it? Pizza Hut, KFC, and Taco Bell, they're all owned by the same corporation, right? So how do you fight these big conglomerates with different
Right,
companies and shell companies?
right.
You build community. Beautiful,
Right, period.
absolutely.
And a lot of these brands are owned by like private equity firms. So that's then touching all of these different sectors. That's then touching housing, healthcare. And so wherever people go, we can still build political power as long as we see it, teach people that there are rights, like how to fight, and that it is all one fight.
Yep. Okay. Now, one last follow-up question for you, Roger. Where in the world have you seen workers successfully overcoming similar obstacles to the precarious and hostile governments that you're dealing with that you see at home?
Let me give the example of Kenya. So I was in Kenya a couple of years ago. And one of the things that is really important to understand about Kenya is that the informal economy makes up 90% of the economy. So by that, I mean that people have to basically scratch a living for themselves, and have got no security, no idea about where they're going to get where they're going to get their wages from every day, how they're going to put bread on the table for their families. But what I saw there was I saw something really imaginative, actually, which I wrote about, and I've been thinking a lot about, which is uh, there was a compound in Nairobi where people would come to get their cars repaired. And what would happen is there'd be somebody bring a car to the front of this compound. Somebody, you'd tell the person on the front what's wrong with your car. And then you would be directed to a particular bit of this compound to get the work done. So these are all people kind of on their own, not employed by anybody, kind of fixing, I don't know, windscreen or fixing tires or whatever. And then if there was more than one thing, you say your tires done, and then you'd be moved on in the compound to get your windscreen done or something. And this was organized collectively by those people. So I started to hear about, we met the Metal Workers Union General Secretary. Name, so it's so early in the morning now, the name's gone out of my head, but she was great union organizer. And she said, well, what we wanted to do, because we know that there's talk about setting up a car industry in Kenya. So what we want to do is we want to give these people some power because at the moment they're just kind of on their own and just fixing cars. And so the union came in and didn't just say, well, what we need you all to do is to join the union and pay dues to the union and all that. What we're going to do is we're going to support you in terms of what you're doing on this compound, and we're going to help to develop your skills. So we'll help by sending you off to kind of college or whatever to learn more about that particular bit of your industry, to learn more about being a mechanic or something. And that's what they did. So as the car industry will develop in Nairobi or around Nairobi, then those people with that link with the union will become the first people who will be have an opportunity to work in that car industry because they've got the skills, they'll have the qualifications that they're helped with. They've been helped to get by the union, and then no doubt because they've got that relationship with the union, they'll feel more inclined to join the union and more inclined to tell anybody else in that workplace about joining the union. So it's a very different way to what normally happens, where people say, join the union and then we'll do something for you, rather than let's do something together. And then what will come is trust and all the rest of it. And then people will see the benefit, the point of being in the union. Because I think far too often, there's too many union organisers, black and white, frankly, who are going around and saying, look, just join us and then everything's going to be all right because we're going to do it all for you. And that's not real life. What actually happens, and I think is much more imaginative and much more about what we're going to face, is we've got to find different ways of being able to do things. And if you think that, I mentioned that the 90% of the informal economy across Kenya, that is usual across most of Africa, actually. Except for probably South Africa and maybe Nigeria. But most of the rest of Africa has got that same sort of level, ish of informal economy. So we've got to think about doing things differently. And how that relates to us here is that because of the way, and Mariah again said this brilliantly earlier on, because of the way that things are being atomized and, we're being kind of cut off from each other as workers. We've got to be much more imaginative about how we can bring workers together. Because I remember trying to organise care workers who, as I mentioned earlier on, who were, we had care workers who used to live round the corner from each other, but never knew that somebody round the corner was a care worker as well. So what we did, first thing we did was put them together online initially because we knew who they were as a union. So we put them together online. And then we used the logic that once they're together online, they absolutely will want to meet. They will want to get together in person. Like I have an urge to meet you all in person because we're meeting each other online. It's just like natural, and that was really successful. We put loads of workers together who've been involved in some really successful organising because we took that initial step of thinking our role isn't to say join the union. Our role is to bring them together. They will find the union.
Man, that's so
Be-
good. So
Before
good.
go ahead, Brent. My bad. But I just want to say before I pass it to Brent. Yo, thank you, Roger. Shout out to Kenya. All right, all the young kids and the unions in Kenya. We see you tearing up the streets out there against the crooked ass President Ruto, sending soldiers to Haiti. Okay, we got Haitians in Haiti fighting against the Kenyan soldiers, and the young people in the union fighting against the Kenyan police. So that's solidarity right there. Okay, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I think like so many people have this image of unions as, oh, you get a union job when you sign paperwork and then the union does something for you. So I think like, your approach it and the way to think of unions in that way is really dope and really on point. Also to your point about the informal economy, if we think about Britain or we think about the US, okay, it's not 90%, but it's probably massively undercounted. Um, Especially now, in the US, we have the what they call it here, the gig economy. Um, if you don't know somebody that's relying on gigs or who is working a part of the informal economy, maybe you're just not talking to your friends enough. Um, because yeah, which is a challenge for labor organizing, but also I think potentially a real untapped source of power. So yeah, so thank you for highlighting that. We're over time already. Unfortunately, we could keep going. So we're gonna ask everybody to just rock with us for maybe 10 minutes more. But before we get to our Q&A, I have one last question for both of you, Roger and Mariah. Um, Something looking towards the future with hope. What gives you hope for the future of the labor movement and for Black radical organizing in general? And again, whoever wants to go first.
You all, actually. That's what gives me confidence is that there's people, we get the message all the time that there's no point and that people aren't interested, that people aren't doing stuff. But we've got loads of people on this call. And we've probably got loads of people who couldn't make it on this call for whatever reason, who usually turn up. Um, there's people doing stuff, and it's not just in the US, not just in Britain. It's not just in France, and it's not just in Spain and the Netherlands and wherever. It's not just across the whole of Africa. There's people everywhere who are organizing. We not long ago we had the biggest strike in world history in India. You know, it's no small thing. This was like, how many was it? It was like 100 million people or something, on strike. It's crazy numbers. And they didn't just do it once, they've done it twice. These are crazy numbers of having that many people on strike. And what I get to write about every day is to see that, I get to see people organizing. And as long as we can maintain that spirit of, we have to change things, then things will change because, that's you've got to start from that position that change is possible. If you don't start from there, then it's impossible.
Sorry, Roger. Corporate news media got us on blackout over here. I don't think many people heard about that huge strike in India. That is amazing. 100 million? Woo! Come
It's
on.
crazy,
All right,
dog.
nobody.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm so glad that Roger brought up like the big scale because there's so many scales of inspiration we could draw from. For me, it's actually the tiniest little thing, seemingly, but it's the moments of like transformation in a single worker when you realize, oh shit, it's it's about to go down. Like we are like this person has unlocked their own leadership that was always lying dormant within them. I was working with a young man who is a bike courier for Uber Eats. He got hit by a car last year and was in intensive care for many weeks and it's been in recovery. But now that he is back on his feet, he's back on his bike delivering food again. And we, invited him to get up on the stage at a No Kings rally on Saturday, speak it out in front of 20,000 people in Atlanta about his fight for, for his rights, for his dignity, the modern civil rights revolution we are facing today. And ever since then, I've seen the hunger to organize in him just completely change. And so seeing that transformation in somebody, seeing somebody, you've been badgering on the phone day in, day out, like, yo, you got to come to the meeting, you got to come to the meeting. One day you call them, hey, come do outreach with me. Like, what do you mean? I'm already out here. I got 4 workers signed up today. Where are you? That happened. That's an example from just yesterday that happened. Somebody on my team. So those moments where you see the transformation in somebody give me so much hope and so much belief in our people that our people are going to win with time, and that really helps keep me going.
Hell yeah, Mariah. Absolutely, Roger. Thank you both so much. Now, listen, y'all. Okay, we got a few more minutes. Rock with it for a few more minutes. If you got, it's the Q&A time. We got Roger up way past his bedtime. I know he look young, but you know, black don't crack. Okay, but anybody got any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand. We'll leave a few minutes for Q&A for our guests.
We have a thank you, Mariah and Roger. We have two questions on Stack in the Q&A. Might have time for one more. I can start in the meantime with the first one. Dale asks, how do you create and maintain the sense of collectivism that both of you talked about, and particularly among youth?
I love that question. It's so important, and it's something that USSW takes incredibly seriously, because we also have a really strong emphasis on culture. So we like our meetings are rowdy as hell. Like we sing together, we interrupt each other with chants. If people who are familiar with like the Southern Black Baptist tradition might hear a lot of echoes in the way that we conduct our meetings. Because singing together, raising our voice together, it's not just for the picket line. It's not just for like when you have megaphone and you're marching down the street. It's all the time, and creating that like vibrational sense of unison in raising our voices collectively like that, even in small spaces. It helps create these social bonds that might pre like might be a prerequisite to accepting the political education component, to actually taking the militant action. So we try to draw and keep young folks in through just like mimicking the street corner cipher in the way that like the debates go down in the union hall, hosting art builds frequently so people can just get together and paint. We don't have to talk about all the heavy shit. We could just paint. And those small acts of like togetherness, I think help. Like people just feel it deeply of nourishing their soul. And before they even get down with like the collectivism thing, they can feel that it is healing and nourishing for them.
Just big up in the chat. I say, as we say in Miami, Haitians, aye bobo. That's spiritual. Beautiful. Roger.
Well, I spoke at a rally in London 2 weeks ago, um, for for the Palestinians, and every 2 weeks we've been having massive rallies in London. Although the government's trying to stop us, but we have rallies, big demonstrations, hundreds of thousands of people on the street.
Shout out Palestine Liberation Action.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. I'll probably be arrested for even saying that now over here, because that's what it gets like. But I remember I stood on the stage and I remember looking out at the stage. So I was there speaking on behalf of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. I'm a vice president of the organization. And I looked at, and what was great was how many young people were out there. So I think there's a clarity amongst lots of young people anyway about things that are not right, and about the need to put things right. And equally, I see lots of young people on anti-racist demonstrations in Britain as well. So what I also see is that there's lots of young people who are not interested in the old ways of doing things, that they want to do things differently, and that's all fine. When I worked for Unison here, the fastest growing part of the membership of Unison by far was its young members, actually. Right. So there's an understanding there that the issue is how we can turn it into an ongoing kind of process. So like the Gaza stuff, all these young people are turning out to support the Palestinians against the genocide that they're facing. How can we turn that into more than a protest about the genocidal Israelis? Rather than just they will turn up every couple of weeks to march. How can we turn that into something more? But the fact, young people being involved isn't an issue for us. It's not the problem. It's how we can turn that into an ongoing kind of revolutionary change, it seems to me.
Okay, next question on the stack. How do you coach workers/organizers around relating international news to local news. I have trouble connecting dots materially and don't want to rely solely on theory. I like that last part.
Take it away, Roger. I mean, come on, you the journalist here. You
Yeah,
the newsman.
I think that there's a real challenge. Um, there's the because we've got the problem of the idea that social media is the news, and that you can tell the news within however many words you can use on Blue Sky or X or Facebook or whatever, right? And you can't tell the news in that. You can have a nice ditty kind of few words in there, but it's not the news. So how can we get people to understand that there's more to the news than 113 words or whatever it is, and but also on top of that, there's the need for a deeper dive into the news as well. One of the things I do every week, I'm on this podcast called Give the People What They Want, which is organized by People's Dispatch, which anybody listening to this, I highly recommend, right? If people haven't read their stuff and haven't listened to the podcast. And that's our way of just giving like a précis of the news. So there's three of us on there, and each of us get two stories that we talk about for like 5 minutes. And that's really helpful, just in breaking down a little bit. And it's really helpful for me as a journalist, actually, and just say, right, so how can I talk about Gaza in 5 minutes? How can I talk about the the removal of a Western puppet from Madagascar in 5 minutes, and put that over in a way that people will understand the political significance of what's taking place, rather than just, well, this happened and then shut up, but just say, this is why it happened. So if we can get more of that taking place, I think that would be helpful, just thinking about how we present the news. And it's something we're thinking about all the time in the Morning Star as well.
Mariah, same question.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah. Mariah, you're muted. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm not sure how I could follow that, y'all. I'm gonna be so real. But I see somebody had asked a question about inspiration up
Oh, that was
next,
going to be next. Yes, feel free.
and where
Yeah.
labor organizers can go to feel inspiration or find inspiration. Yeah, I mean, like studying history, obviously, but like where to get the history from. Raise Up the South, which is our Instagram page, we post this day in labor history um, videos pretty much weekly. And so you can go and check out different victories folks have won, particularly in the South through labor struggle. I'd also highly recommend Labor on the Line. Oh, I can post it in the chat also, so y'all could follow us soon to get out of here.
Yes,
Labor on the
please do.
Line does a really great coverage of modern day labor struggle, but also connecting it to history at times, just to like educate people about what working class people can win when we come together. So I highly recommend checking them out as well. And other sources of inspiration. Holler at me. You can find me on social media also. Stay in touch, DM me. Optimism is a discipline. And so I could definitely refill your cup if you ever get weary and don't know if y'all gonna make it through the struggle.
Listen, curate y'all timelines, okay? If it's some bullshit, hit that unfollow. If it's Mariah, star it, okay? Just star, okay? And Roger, great answer. Yeah, y'all got to stop watching that corporate media bullshit. Do independent, real journalism like the People's Dispatch, like Democracy Now! There's so many of them out there. Y'all just find them.
Man, we appreciate y'all so much, Mariah, Roger. Please, folks in the chat, show some love to our panelists today, for sharing their experience, their wisdom, some real life applicable gems for right now. It's late, but you should feel energized. You should feel ready to join a union, join a picket line, strike, get
Or
organized,
start a union,
or
especially if you
start
ain't
a
got one in
union.
your workplace. Start a union. Just you and the
Look,
homie,
anybody
and
can
you a
be a
homie and
member
another
of the
homie.
Union of Service Workers. I'm gonna put that in the chat. Also, y'all can sign up to be a solidarity member wherever you live. And if you live in the South, in particular, we could definitely tap you into what we're doing. Um, but yeah, very well said about like staying connected. Don't let this be the end. Let this be the beginning. Don't leave here and just say, "Oh, that was fun." Nah, no, 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 no. We connected now. Let's
Yeah,
keep this thing rolling.
this is
Are we
it.
family now? Oh yeah, I could blow up your
Oh, you
phone
know,
and you
oh
can't be
yeah,
mad
yeah.
about
Oh, y'all think you can get rid of me now?
Yeah. We
Y'all make sure to check out Roger's book too, African Yahuru, if I got it correctly. Just these wonderful organizers. Check out their work, support their work, and find out how to get dug into the work in your own communities. Absolutely.
And
Let's
yeah,
throw up the.
we never do, we don't do broadcasts here, right? This is not a podcast. This is not a passive video that you pop in and watch. You should be tapped in. And as always, we end with sharing resources, sharing ways you could get tapped in. Um, and we end with a call to action. So, we are Black Men Build. If you want to learn more about Black Men Build, if you are not a member and want to become one, somebody has just helpfully dropped a link in the chat where you could learn more about membership. We are a grassroots membership organization. Our strength is in building our power and building our numbers. If there is not a hub in your city, if you don't live in New York or Columbus or Milwaukee or St. Louis or Miami or LA, help us build one. There wasn't a hub in New York, and then we built one. There wasn't a hub in Columbus, and then we built one. So we can build one where you are at. Um, Tap in with us. Also, the revolution will be free, but the organizing work to get there is not, as all the organizers in here know. So if you have a couple dollars that you're going to spend on bullshit anyway, throw them our way. Because we could always use it to fight for the people, to put on programming like this, to bring you political education, to bring men's circles to your cities, and to keep doing the work that we're doing. Thank you again to Mariah. Thank you to Roger. Roger, I know this was tough for you to be on because Aston Villa lost today. Um, I was holding that one in my pocket until the end.
Yeah,
Damn.
thanks for that. I was trying to get
Yeah,
that out of my head.
yeah, yeah.
Damn. Don't let the door hit him on the way out, bro.
Yeah, you know. Keep me here for an hour and a half and then
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I saw that result today. Anyway, peace to the nines, love to the nines, power to the nines, all the damn time. Uh, Thank you for everybody being here. Love y'all.
Peace
Thank you
and
all so
love, y'all.
much.
Thank you, Mariah. Thank you, Roger, so
See you
much.
soon.